The breaking point. The massive conference hall on Nexus Prime Station buzzed with the clicking, chirping, and electronic sounds of 50 different alien species. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat perfectly still at the curved table, her hands folded as she watched the chaos unfold around her. The translator device in her ear converted the alien languages into English, but she almost wished it would break. Maybe then she would not have to hear what they were really saying about her people. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez leaned over and whispered to her. His weathered face looked tired after 15 years of serving on alien worlds. They are getting worse. Every year, Sarah. The disrespect is becoming unbearable. Sarah nodded but kept her expression neutral. She had learned long ago that showing emotion only made the aliens think humans were even more primitive. General Patricia Stone sat on her other side, her military uniform crisp and decorated with medals from a dozen different conflicts. Patricia had saved entire star systems from destruction, but none of the aliens seemed to remember that today. Chancellor Krixtal rose from his seat. The insectoid creature was 12 feet tall with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected the light like black diamonds. His species, the Zephyrians, controlled most of the galaxy's mining operations. When he spoke, his voice buzzed like 1,000 angry wasps. The Earth delegation continues to waste our time with their ridiculous requests, Krixtal announced. They want representation on the Science Council, as if their primitive minds could understand true research. They demand voting rights on trade agreements as if they understand interstellar commerce. These humans forget their place in our galaxy. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Krillian representative, Overlord Thane, stood next. His crystalline body rang like a bell as he moved. The Krillians were ancient beings who had mastered energy manipulation, when humans were still discovering fire. The Chancellor speaks. Truth. Thane's voice echoed from his crystal form. Humans are useful servants, nothing more. They grow food well and clean up our messes efficiently, but they are not ready to sit at the table with civilized species. Perhaps in another 1,000 years when they have evolved beyond their violent nature. Sarah felt her jaw clench, but she remained silent. Around the table, other aliens nodded and made sounds of approval. The Aquatic Cetacean Federation had representatives who looked like giant whales with mechanical arms. Their Prime Minister, Veltar, spoke through a water-filled helmet. Humans serve their purpose, Veltar bubbled. Our ocean worlds need their terraforming expertise, but they must remember they exist to serve the Council, not to question it. Dr. Rodriguez placed a gentle hand on Sarah's arm. He could see her patience wearing thin. In his 40 years of life, Marcus had watched humans save countless alien worlds. When the Krillian colonies were hit by solar flares, human engineers had worked for months without sleep to restore their power grids. When plague struck the Zephyrian homeworld, human doctors had developed a cure in record time. When entire star systems faced starvation, human agricultural experts had turned barren worlds into gardens. But none of that seemed to matter now. The debate continued for hours. The aliens discussed humans as if they were not even in the room. They talked about increasing food production quotas, demanding more human workers for dangerous jobs, and reducing the already small payments Earth received for its services. Finally, Chancellor Krixtal brought up the topic that made Sarah's blood run cold. There is one more matter, the insectoid clicked. The Andromedan Collective has made a request. They wish to study human genetics to improve their own reproduction rates. They require 1,000 human children between the ages of 5 and 10 for their research facilities. The room fell silent. Sarah slowly stood from her chair. Her face had gone completely pale, but her voice was steady and clear. "Excuse me?" she said. Krixtal's compound eyes focused on her with annoyance. "Ambassador Chen, you were not given permission to speak." "I am asking for clarification," Sarah replied. "Did you just say that someone wants to take 1,000 human children for experiments?" "The Andromedans are renowned scientists," Overlord Thane chimed in. "They have contributed greatly to galactic knowledge. If they require human specimens for their research, Earth should be honored to provide them." Sarah looked around the room. Not a single alien seemed to see anything wrong with this request. General Stone stood up beside her, her hand instinctively moving toward her sidearm. Dr. Rodriguez was shaking his head in disbelief. "You want to take our children," Sarah said slowly, "and use them as test subjects." The term test subjects is unnecessarily dramatic, Chancellor Krickstahl buzzed. They would be research participants. The knowledge gained could benefit the entire galaxy. And what happens to the children after the research is complete? The aliens exchanged glances. Prime Minister Veltar spoke first. "That is not really our concern. The Andromedans have assured us the research is important." Sarah felt something break inside her chest. For 15 years she had believed that eventually the aliens would see humans as equals. She had thought that by proving their worth, by serving faithfully, by saving lives and solving problems, humans would earn respect. She had been wrong. "Dr. Rodriguez," she said without taking her eyes off the aliens, "send a message to Earth. Command. Tell them to implement Protocol Omega immediately." Marcus looked surprised. Protocol Omega was something they had hoped never to use. It was the complete withdrawal of all human assets from Council space. "Sarah, are you sure?" he whispered. "Send the message, Doctor." General Stone stepped forward. "All human personnel are to return to Earth immediately. All human-operated facilities are to be shut down. All human technology is to be removed or destroyed." The aliens began making agitated noises. Chancellor Krickstahl's wings buzzed angrily. "You cannot simply leave. You have contracts to fulfill. You have obligations to the Council." Sarah looked at him with cold eyes. "Our obligation was to serve honorable allies. You have proven that you are neither honorable nor allies. You see us as livestock to be bred and harvested. This partnership is over." "You are making a mistake," Overlord Thane warned. "Without Council protection, humanity will be vulnerable. Pirates will attack your worlds. Other species will see you as easy targets. We will take our chances," Sarah replied. She turned to leave, but Chancellor Krickstahl's voice stopped her. "You cannot survive without us. Humans are weak. You need our guidance, our protection, our wisdom. You will come crawling back within a year begging for our mercy." Sarah paused at the doorway. She looked back at the assembled aliens one last time. "You know what the funny thing is?" she said. "We never needed you. We thought we did, but we were wrong. You needed us. You just never realized it." The door slid shut behind the human delegation. Within hours, the evacuation began. On 300 worlds across the galaxy, humans received the emergency broadcast. Research stations were abandoned. Medical facilities were evacuated. Agricultural colonies packed up their equipment. Terraforming projects were shut down. Captain Elena Vasquez commanded the heavy cruiser UES Defiance as it approached the Kepler 442 system. Her ship was one of 50 vessels tasked with evacuating human personnel from critical locations. The planet below had been a dead rock 5 years ago. Now it was a green world with breathable atmosphere, thanks to human terraforming technology. "Captain, we are receiving desperate transmissions from the Aquatic Federation colonists," her communications officer reported. "They are begging us not to leave. They say they cannot maintain the atmospheric processors without our technicians." Elena felt a pang of sympathy, but her orders were clear. All human personnel are to be evacuated immediately. Destroy any technology that cannot be removed. On the planet's surface, Dr. James Park supervised the dismantling of the massive atmospheric conversion plants. His team worked quickly to remove the quantum cores that powered the machines. Without these components, the terraforming equipment would be useless metal sculptures. "Doctor, the alien colonists are offering us anything we want to stay," one of his assistants reported. "They say they will give us full citizenship rights, seats on their governing council, anything." Dr. Park shook his head sadly. "Too little, too late. Load the cores into the transport." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On space stations, human engineers removed critical components from life support systems. On agricultural worlds, human farmers took their genetic seed banks and specialized equipment On research facilities, human scientists wiped their databases and destroyed years of work rather than leave it behind. The aliens watched in growing panic as their comfortable civilization began to crumble. They had not realized how dependent they had become on human expertise. Food production systems failed without human agricultural knowledge. Communication networks went dark as human-maintained relay stations shut down. Medical facilities struggled as human doctors and nurses departed, taking their advanced techniques with them. Back on Nexus Prime Station, Chancellor Krixtal stood in his office watching transport ships leave the station. His compound eyes tracked each vessel as it departed. His aide, a younger Zephyrian named Skrixtal, buzzed nervously beside him. "Chancellor, perhaps we should reconsider the human requests. The evacuations are causing significant problems across our territories." Krixtal's wings fluttered with irritation. "Nonsense. Humans are replaceable. We managed perfectly well before they arrived. We will adapt." But even as he spoke the words, he knew they were not entirely true. The lights in his office flickered as the station's power grid struggled without human maintenance. The air recycling system made strange noises that had never been there before. Down in the docking bays, cargo ships sat idle because human logistics coordinators were no longer there to organize the complex loading and unloading procedures. Prime Minister Veltar floated in his aquatic chamber, watching status reports stream across his display screens. Colony after colony was reporting critical system failures. The ocean world of Aquatica Prime was experiencing massive algae blooms because the human-designed water treatment plants had been shut down. The carefully balanced ecosystem that had taken years to establish was collapsing in a matter of days. "Minister," his aide gurgled urgently, "we are receiving evacuation requests from 17 colonies. They say their life support systems are failing." Veltar's whale-like form trembled with fear. "Can we not repair the systems ourselves?" "The technology is too complex, Minister. We have always relied on human technicians to maintain it." The realization hit Veltar like a cold wave. The Aquatic Federation controlled dozens of star systems, but they could not keep their own worlds habitable without human help. On the crystalline homeworld of the Krillian Empire, Overlord Thane discovered that his people faced similar problems. The Krillians were masters of energy manipulation, but they had grown dependent on human-designed computers to coordinate their power grids. As human technicians evacuated, the complex systems began to fail in cascade failures that the Krillians could not predict or prevent. "Overlord, 3 industrial complexes have suffered total power failures," his lieutenant reported. "Without the human prediction algorithms, we cannot anticipate grid instabilities." Thane's crystalline body dimmed with worry. "Surely our own engineers can solve this problem." "They are trying, Overlord, but the human systems are more sophisticated than we realized. It may take years to develop replacements." Years. Thane realized that his empire could not survive years of industrial chaos. The Krillians needed those factories to produce the goods they traded with other species. Without trade, their economy would collapse. As the first week of human withdrawal ended, panic began to spread through the Galactic Council. Emergency sessions were called, desperate messages were sent to Earth, but they all received the same automatic reply. "The Earth government is not currently accepting communications from Council species. Please contact us again when you are prepared to negotiate as equals." The word equals burned in the aliens' minds. They had spent so long thinking of humans as servants that they had forgotten humans were a sentient species with their own rights and dignity. But by then, it was too late to simply apologize and ask for forgiveness. The damage had been done, and the galaxy was about to learn just how much they had taken the humans for granted. The reckoning 3 months had passed since the great human exodus, and the galaxy was dying. Not literally, but the carefully maintained civilization that had flourished for centuries was collapsing piece by piece. On Nexus Prime Station, Chancellor Krixtal stood before an emergency assembly of the Galactic Council. His usually pristine carapace was dull and scratched. He had not been maintaining himself properly because he was too busy dealing with crisis after crisis. "Fellow council members," he buzzed, his voice lacking its usual arrogance. "We face unprecedented challenges. Food production across our territories has decreased by 78%. Communication networks are failing in 12 sectors. Medical emergencies are overwhelming our remaining facilities." The great chamber that had once been filled with confident alien leaders now held desperate, frightened beings. Prime Minister, Feltar's aquatic chamber had several cracks in it because the human technicians who knew how to maintain the specialized glass were gone. Overlord Thane's crystalline form had lost much of its brilliant glow, as power shortages affected even the Council's headquarters. "How is this possible?" demanded Senator Ireltak of the Spiral Federation. "Humans were just agricultural workers and maintenance staff. How can their absence cause such widespread problems?" Dr. Zexthor, the Council's chief scientist, stood to respond. His tentacled form writhed with agitation. "I have been studying this question for weeks. The answer is troubling. Humans were not just workers. They were the invisible foundation holding our civilization together." He activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy's trade routes. "Observe. Red lines indicate failed shipping lanes. In 3 months, 67% of our major trade routes have become unusable. Why? Because humans were the ones maintaining the fuel depots, repair stations, and navigation beacons along these routes." The display changed to show agricultural worlds. "Food production has collapsed because humans developed 93% of our terraforming technology. More importantly, they were the only ones who truly understood how to operate it. We thought it was simple farming, but they were managing complex ecosystem balances that took decades to establish." Overlord Thane's voice resonated with confusion. "But they never claimed to be scientists or engineers. They presented themselves as simple workers." "That," said Dr. Zexthor, "was our first mistake. We assumed that because humans did not boast about their abilities, they lacked sophistication. We now know they deliberately downplayed their capabilities." A new voice spoke from the back of the chamber. It belonged to Archivist Meldana, an ancient being whose species had been keeping galactic records for millennia. "I have been reviewing historical communications between Earth and the Council. The humans tried to warn us many times about system vulnerabilities and the need for redundant safeguards. We dismissed their concerns as primitive worrying." She projected a series of old messages. "Here, 12 years ago, Dr. Rodriguez warned that the Kepler system's atmospheric processors needed upgraded backup systems. We told him to focus on his job and not worry about engineering. 8 years ago, Ambassador Chen requested that Council species be trained in emergency terraforming procedures. We said it was unnecessary because humans would always be available to handle such matters." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans had not abandoned their posts irresponsibly. They had tried to prepare the galaxy for their potential absence, but the aliens had been too arrogant to listen. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES New Horizon, as it patrolled the edges of what was now being called the Human Defense Zone. In the 3 months since the Exodus, humanity had not been idle. Free from the burden of maintaining alien civilizations, human engineers and scientists had made remarkable advances. "Captain," her tactical officer reported, "we are detecting another diplomatic vessel approaching the perimeter. It is the 5th one this week." Elena smiled grimly. "Every day brought new alien delegations begging for human assistance. The requests were always the same: humanitarian aid for failing colonies, emergency food supplies, technical expertise to repair critical systems." "Standard response, Lieutenant. Inform them that the Human Federation is not currently accepting requests for aid from former Council species." "Aye, Captain." Elena looked out at the stars and thought about how much had changed. Humanity had not fled to Earth and hidden in fear as the aliens had predicted. Instead, they had used their newfound independence to create something better. Hidden colonies that had been kept secret from the Council were now thriving centers of human civilization. Technologies that had been deliberately kept simple to avoid alarming alien sensibilities were being developed to their full potential. The most remarkable development was the quantum communication network. For decades, humans had used the alien relay stations like everyone else, pretending they had no alternative. But in secret, human scientists had been developing instantaneous communication technology. Now the Human Federation could coordinate across vast distances in real time, giving them a massive advantage over the fragmented alien civilizations. Dr. James Park reviewed the reports from New Terra, humanity's agricultural capital. The planet had been terraformed using advanced techniques that made alien worlds look primitive by comparison. Instead of simply making planets habitable, humans had created perfect ecosystems that could produce food more efficiently than anything the galaxy had ever seen. The irony is beautiful, James said to his research team. The aliens always complained that our food was too simple, too basic. They never realized we were feeding them using technology they could not understand. His assistant, Dr. Lisa Wong, nodded in agreement. The council species were so focused on maintaining their sense of superiority that they never asked how we could feed 300 worlds with such apparent ease. And now they are starving, James added without any satisfaction in his voice. Despite everything that had happened, most humans took no pleasure in alien suffering. Back on Nexus Prime Station, the crisis was deepening. Chancellor Krixtal had just received word that the Andromedan Collective, the same species that had requested human children for experiments, was facing complete societal collapse. Their advanced reproductive research had depended entirely on human-grown medicinal plants that could no longer be obtained. Ironic, is it not? Buzzing came from behind him. Krixtal turned to see Minister Zalthek of the Aquatic Federation. The whale-like being had somehow managed to travel to Nexus Prime despite the transportation crisis. Minister, Krixtal acknowledged, I assume you bring more bad news. Indeed. Aquatica Prime is now uninhabitable. The ecosystem collapse accelerated beyond our worst projections. 3 billion of my people are now refugees, scattered across space stations and temporary shelters. Krixtal's compound eyes dimmed. The Council Emergency Fund can provide some assistance, but our resources are stretched thin. We both know the Council cannot solve this crisis, Zaltek replied. There is only one solution, and we both know what it is. The two leaders stood in uncomfortable silence, neither wanting to voice the obvious truth. They needed the humans back. But humans were no longer the desperate species seeking acceptance that they had been 15 years ago. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy about human activities. The mysterious Human Federation was not just surviving independently, they were thriving. Human colonies were expanding into previously unexplored regions of space. Human ships were being spotted with technology that far exceeded anything the Council had seen before. Most unsettling of all, several minor alien species had begun requesting permission to join the Human Federation rather than seek Council aid. The Kepler Mining Collective, a small species that had always been treated as second-class citizens by the Council, had announced their intention to align with humanity. Their representative had transmitted a simple message. The humans treat us as partners, not servants. The choice is obvious. 3 more minor species had followed suit in the past month. The aliens were beginning to realize that humanity was not just another civilization to be managed and controlled. They were witnessing the rise of a new galactic power. We must contact Earth, Prime Minister Veltar announced during another emergency council session. Pride is a luxury we can no longer afford. And say what? Chancellor Krixtal demanded. That we were wrong? That we need them? They will demand concessions we may not be willing to grant. What concessions could be worse than the collapse of our civilization? Overlord Thane asked. His crystalline form was noticeably dimmer than it had been months ago. My empire has lost 30% of its industrial capacity. My people are beginning to question my leadership. Dr. Zexthor activated another holographic display. I have been analyzing human communications intercepts. The situation is worse than we feared. The Human Federation is not simply waiting for us to apologize. They are actively building a new galactic order without us. The display showed shipping routes, communication networks, and trade agreements, all human-controlled, all completely independent of Council oversight. They are establishing their own diplomatic relationships, Dr. Zexthor continued. 17 species have now signed trade agreements with the Human Federation. These are not emergency aid arrangements. These are permanent economic partnerships. The implications were staggering. For thousands of years, the Galactic Council had controlled interstellar trade and diplomacy. Now humanity was creating an alternative power structure that could eventually replace the Council entirely. We have to act now, Beltar said urgently. Every day we delay, the Human Federation grows stronger, and our position becomes weaker. Chancellor Krixtall finally accepted what they all knew was inevitable. Very well. I will personally travel to Earth and request negotiations. As equals, Overlord Thane added quietly. Yes? Krixtall buzzed, the words tasting bitter in his mouth. As equals. 2 weeks later, Chancellor Krixtall stood in the Terran Senate chamber in New Geneva, Earth's capital. The room was built in classical human architectural style, with marble columns and warm lighting that was gentle on alien eyes. It was beautiful, dignified, and completely different from the cold metal halls of the Council. Across from him sat President Maria Santos, the elected leader of the Human Federation. She was flanked by familiar faces. Ambassador Sarah Chen, now serving as Secretary of State, Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, now Director of Xenocultural Affairs, and General Patricia Stone, now Defense Minister. Chancellor Krixtall, President Santos, said with formal politeness, "We appreciate your willingness to travel to Earth for these discussions. Please tell us what the Council seeks." Krixtall had prepared a lengthy speech about mutual benefit and shared interests, but when he looked at the calm, confident faces of the human leaders, he realized that diplomatic language would be pointless. "We need your help," he said simply. "Our civilizations are failing without human assistance. We made a mistake." "What kind of mistake?" Sarah Chen asked. "We treated you as servants instead of partners. We took your contributions for granted. We refused to recognize your worth." Each word was difficult for Krixtall to speak, but he forced himself to continue. "We were wrong." President Santos leaned back in her chair. "Chancellor, 3 months ago your council demanded 1,000 human children for experiments. Today, you acknowledge that you were wrong. This is certainly progress, but we need to understand what has actually changed." Dr. Rodriguez spoke up. "The Council spent 15 years telling us we were primitive, violent, and unworthy of respect. Why should we believe that your opinion of humanity has genuinely changed?" Krixtall looked around the room. Unlike the chaotic, competitive atmosphere of council chambers, the humans listened to each other with respect. Even when they disagreed, they treated each other as equals. It was something he had never really noticed before. "Because," he said slowly, "we have learned what the galaxy looks like without you. We have seen what we truly are when we stand alone." "And what are you?" General Stone asked. "Fragile," Krixtall admitted. "Dependent. Less capable than we believed. We built our superiority on the foundation of your work, and when you removed that foundation, we collapsed." The human leaders exchanged glances. President Santos spoke again. "The Human Federation is willing to consider new relationships with Council species, but the terms will be very different from the previous arrangements." "What terms?" "Full diplomatic recognition, equal voting rights on all joint projects, shared authority in any cooperative ventures, and absolute sovereignty over human worlds and citizens." Krixtall felt relief flood through his body. "Yes, all of that is acceptable. There is one more condition," Sarah Chen added. "The Council must formally acknowledge that the previous treatment of humanity was unjust and commit to treating all species, major and minor, with equal dignity." This was harder for Krixtall to accept. It meant acknowledging that the entire galactic hierarchy was wrong, not just their treatment of humans. But as he thought about the minor species that were already joining the Human Federation, he realized the old order was doomed anyway. "I will recommend these terms to the full Council," he said. "We hope they will be accepted," President Santos replied. "Humanity has no desire to see alien civilizations suffer. We want to build something better, together." As Crystal left Earth, he reflected on how much had changed. 3 months ago, he had thought humans were barely intelligent animals. Now he understood they were the architects of galactic civilization. They had built the systems that sustained. Hundreds of worlds solved problems that had stumped alien scientists for generations and maintained peace through their quiet competence. Most importantly, when they were treated with contempt, they had not responded with violence or revenge. They had simply walked away and built something better. It was perhaps the most human response possible. Practical, dignified, and devastatingly effective. The Galactic Council would vote to accept the human terms. They had no choice. But Crystal suspected that this was not really the end of the crisis, but the beginning of a new era. An era where humanity would no longer hide their capabilities or accept second-class treatment. The galaxy was about to discover what humans could accomplish when they were truly free to reach their potential. And, somehow, Crystal thought that might be the most terrifying and wonderful thing that had ever happened to the stars.